And now for something completely different.
Forget everything you've been told by others before. Get ready for the real deal, the full story, real talk about money, markets, life. Now, it's The Real Investment Show with Lance Roberts, presented by RIA Advisors.
And good morning and welcome to the show. Of course, it's Tuesday as we get ready to wrap up the last week of April already. I mean, it's come the end of April. April showers bring May flowers, apparently. We'll see. All I know is we've got a lot of pollen and June bugs already. So everybody's off their clock.
That's what April brings you.
Everybody's off their clock right now. June bugs out in April. Dogs sleeping with cats. I mean, it's terrible. You know.
Oh, don't forget the love bug infestation.
Yes, and the love bugs and the pollen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hey, welcome to Texas. Anyway, lots of stuff going on. Yesterday was interesting from a couple of standpoints. First of all, Elon Musk, of course, had made the bid for Twitter at $54.20. Now, you drop the 5, you get his very famous 420 marker, which is one of his things that he does quite often, throws out numbers always at the 420 level. So $54.20 was the bid for Twitter, of course. Remember, Twitter immediately rejected the bid and launched a poison pill. Here's the problem, and we discussed this a bit previously. Poison pills are great to try to fend off a hostile takeover, but they have problems. And particularly, the problem that Twitter had is that the offer was so good that going against that offer was actually not in the benefit of shareholders. And corporations do have a responsibility, believe it or not, to their shareholders. And very quickly, they were advised that, you know what, you better take that offer. Otherwise, you're going to be sued out of existence. But here's the interesting thing. If we go back, $54.20 basically puts the stock about where it'll trade today. Just about halfway through the recent sell-off. So, it's a very nice return here. Now, of course, Elon Musk had bought about 9.2% of the company near the lows, and well, actually at the recent lows, he set the bottom. And that, of course, once he announced his stake in the company, the stock started to rise. So he's had a very, very nice return off of his investment already of his 9.2% stake. Of course, now he'll take 100% of the company. Now, interestingly enough, though, if we go back to the beginning of where IPO first came public, back in 2014, the stock is now barely trading above that level. So investors have had no return out of this company now for, almost 7-8 years. And that, of course, is an interesting byproduct, considering that Twitter is now one of the major social media platforms in the country. The people that brought this company public, they made money. Nobody else has really made money on this deal. So again, we'll see how this goes here over the next few days. But this was a very quick turnaround for Elon Musk. Now, he's talking about doing some pretty radical things for Twitter. But here's the more interesting thing that I think he's talking about. And I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work out well. So you're paying $44 billion for Twitter. And again, no, by all metrics, he's overpaying for the company. The company is not worth $44 billion. But he wants to take the company private. Here's the problem I see with him taking it private, and I think he'll opt out of that decision ultimately and leave it a public company, because the $44 billion is a function of price of the shares times the number of shares. It's called market capitalization. And so the market capitalization of the company is price times the number of earnings outstanding. The number of shares outstanding. So this is kind of where around he is generating $44 billion. The company does not generate $44 billion in revenue. So even at a reasonable multiple of what Twitter Twitter makes in terms of income and revenue and actual net earnings, he's paying a vast amount of money for Twitter, and way more than the company will ever earn. Taking the company private, the company will never earn enough to pay back the $44 billion that he's paying for the company. The only way for him to maximize that $44 billion investment and someday, have a return on that investment is to leave this a public company, improve the platform so that the stock price goes up. And so, that's going to be a generation of more ad revenue. Of course, with his personality, maybe he can do this, but attract more advertisers to the site. This is how Twitter makes money. It is through the advertising and through the other platforms they have, subscription services, etc. That's how these social media companies make money. And if Twitter's ever going to grow to the point that it can support a $44 billion valuation, it'll have to stay public. So he may take it private initially, and that would not be a surprise as he kind of retools the platform and does whatever he's going to do with it, and then bring it back public ultimately down the road at some point to capitalize on that investment. Could very well be the strategy as well. So he has a very small family office that runs his basically his net worth in Austin, Texas, and the guy that runs this family office was his Morgan Stanley investment banker that's helped him along the way with most of his deals. So I'm sure there's a strategy being put in place right now, potentially for either taking the company private now, retooling the platform, taking it back out public, and that's where he could maximize his value. Take the $44 billion, he comes out public again, raises another $60 billion in the public offering, gets his money back, right? So that's how he potentially works through this process to create a profitable return. This could be probably a 12 to 18 to 24 month process to try to figure out how to turn the company around. Some of the things that he's talked about, of course, is turning the Twitter offices into a homeless shelter. That is funny, but it's also a statement as to really the culture of the company. Inside that company, there was a recent article about written on Yahoo Finance. The author had gone out to the Yahoo offices, to the Twitter offices, and said there was basically no energy, there was no activity, there was really kind of nobody around. You would expect to go into the Twitter offices and there'd be programmers everywhere, programming stuff coming up, but there was no activity whatsoever. The building was virtually empty. And so this is kind of goes to the point and the heart of the problems of Twitter over the course of the last few years, and really kind of reflects in the stock price. So we'll see how this goes, but this is going to be a very interesting process to watch, just from a standpoint of, he wants to create this platform now, take Twitter, turn it back into a platform of free speech, less censorship, less control over what's being said. Of course, leaving this as a platform that it was meant to be, that is non-predatory for users. He's got some good ideas. We'll see what he can do with it. Of course, he's going to be fighting a big uphill battle, of course, with all of the other major players in the space, Facebook, Google, etc., all still pushing on this idea that we need more censorship because, we just can't do this ourselves. Very, very quickly, as we talked about yesterday, markets bounced right off support yesterday. We come down, retested those lows yesterday morning right at the open, retested those March lows, bounced very nicely off that yesterday. Markets are going to be a little bit weak at the open this morning. We'll see if that kind of continues. We've got a lot of earnings coming out today. After the bell today, we've got Google and Microsoft, which will really set the tone for the tech side of the market for the rest of this week. So that kind of all eyes will be watching those two stocks in particular after the bell. We've also got Apple coming up here. We've got Amazon coming up as well over the next few days. That's all going to be driving markets. But pay attention to these recent lows that we set here yesterday. That's the important level to watch. We'll be right back after the break. More of the Real Investment Show coming right up.
Get daily investment news you can use, delivered at the speed of the internet at realinvestmentadvice.com.
How do the richest people in the world invest and protect their families? Richard Rosso and Danny Ratliff's next virtual Lunch and Learn on the truth about life insurance will show you how to insure your income, minimize your taxes, and protect your real estate. Thursday, May 12th at noon. The most important insurance policy you'll ever own is the one you'll have when you die. Register now for the Truth About Life Insurance Lunch and Learn at realinvestmentadvice.com. The truth about life insurance with Ratliff and Rosso. Realinvestmentadvice.com.
Do you know what you don't know when hiring and retaining quality employees? Compensation is more than just wages. It's personal time off, the vacation days, healthcare benefits, a 401k. Do you know what's important to them? Hi, I'm Tom Allen, RIA Advisors Retirement Plan Consultant. Let us show you how to make the most of an affordable, effective package that will deliver true value for your business and your employees. Call me toll-free at 855-RIA-PLAN or online at realinvestmentadvice.com.
Anyone can sell you insurance, and they'll gladly take your premium dollars. The RIA Insurance Agency can provide you with insurance solutions tailor-made for your needs and lifestyle. Because everyone's assets are different, let RIA Insurance review what you need to protect and how. We won't sell you insurance, but what you need will be a matter of policy. RIA Insurance Agency. 888-915-0780. 888-915-0780. RealInvestmentAdvice.com. Click on the insurance tab.
And now, another page from the Real Investment Advisors Investing Manifesto. Bulls win in bull markets. Bears win in bear markets. Eagles soar above and take advantage of opportunity. Let us help you soar as you reach your financial goals with RIA Advisors. Neither bull nor bear. RIA Advisors, 281-501-1791 or online at realinvestmentadvice.com.
The Real Investment Show.
And welcome back to the show this morning. So, interestingly, Donald Trump responding this morning, talking about Twitter, saying he will not rejoin the Twitter platform in the event that his account is unfrozen. Remember, after the whole debacle of January 6th issue in Washington, President Trump was permanently banned from Twitter and has been, of course, working on setting up his own social network. And that's where he's going to be focusing his attention. But he said this morning in a verbal statement he would not be rejoining Twitter. I don't blame him. It's really not worth it. But it is interesting how tone deaf some of these, billionaires that control the world as we know it, really are. I think in a lot of cases, they are surrounded by a very select number of people that all think exactly the same way they do. So they're kind of in this bubble that, the world works the way they think it works, and everybody's completely happy with the status quo. I'm not so sure about that. But Jeff Bezos came out and tweeted out on Twitter that, interesting question, did the Chinese just gain a bit of leverage over the town square being Twitter, because that was what Elon Musk had said Twitter should be. Twitter should be the town square where people can go out, have free speech, say what they need to say, and not be censored, right? That's the whole purpose of free speech within reason, right? Free speech has constraints. You can't go in a crowded theater and yell fire, right? You can't cause damage to other people, but you should otherwise be able to pretty much state your opinion, right, wrong, or indifferent. And unfortunately, the left has become very engaged in censorship of what they deem to be disinformation. Well, it's always the question is who makes who the arbiters of what is truth and what is not truth, right? What is information and what is disinformation? And just because the information being put out there doesn't necessarily agree with your opinion doesn't mean it's disinformation. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. There's been, climate change has been making predictions, or people have been making predictions about climate change for the last 50 years. You know how many of those predictions have come accurate or become true? Zero. None. We were supposed to all be dead by now. Polar bears were supposed to cease to exist like 30 years ago, right? And so, there's this, just because the information is put out there and people make predictions about stuff doesn't mean it's necessarily true. And it doesn't mean that it's disinformation if you disagree with what those opinions are. And the individuals, and this is the whole purpose of social media, the individual is responsible for the information they consume, and it is up to them to verify whether or not they think it's true or not. And if you don't think it's true, if you think there's some guy putting stuff out there, like some financial guy on the radio putting out things about the markets is full of it, well, that's your choice, right? He's probably wrong anyway. Usually is. Anyway, Jeff Bezos wading into the foray. Interesting question. The Chinese government just gained a bit of leverage over town square. You got to be careful when you put stuff on Twitter, because the one thing that is true about Twitter is that it never forgets. And it only took about 37 seconds before people started responding. How much leverage does China have over the Washington Post, which is, of course, owned by Jeff Bezos, given the percentage of goods sold on Amazon that are dependent on that country for supply? The way the Washington Post disses India, I'd say a lot, but it could be an entirely independent prejudice. Then there's a clip from Amazon, a news headline. Amazon agrees to allow only 5-star review for President Xi's new book in China. So Amazon agrees that only 5-star reviews will be allowed on President Xi's book. Why? Because they want to sell product in China. And if you don't, make President Xi happy, well, you're not selling stuff in China. In fact, you're not in China, and they're not selling stuff to you. So exactly the point here being just how much leverage does China have over Amazon? And this is why you've got to be careful about the things that you say. Did the CIA previously gain leverage with the D.C. local discussion via WAPO, pot and kettle? Amazon to ban the word union on its new worker chat app per internal company documents leaked. Other banned terms include living wage, slave labor, harassment, and restrooms. And this is all banned by Amazon. They didn't want that on their internal chat, right? So, this is the problem. What you have, whether it's Amazon or whether it's Facebook or whether it's, all these social media platforms, is they have all engaged in censorship to promote their personal or their corporate views or culture or the things that they don't want to have out there. And look, it's their prerogative. They own the companies, right? But, as individuals, we have to make the decision of which platforms do we use and what information do we consume off those ideas, because those platforms shape your opinion. And, and again, we all suffer from this, particularly and this is particularly when it comes to investing. It's called confirmation bias. And it's one of the biggest traps that investors fall into over time, but it really applies to everything in life, not just our investing habits, but confirmation bias applies to everything else. We believe that, COVID-19 is, a certain thing, right? And so then all we seek out is information that confirms our bias. And any information that is non-confirming, right, we dismiss that. We say, well, that's wrong. If we seek out information about, the markets, right? I think the market's going to crash. So all I read are the most bearish articles I can find because it all confirms my opinion that the market's going to crash. But then the market doesn't crash. And so this is why it's important. We've talked about this before. It's always important to read information that disagrees with you. It gives you a better focus on what you're doing, but it also helps shape your opinions in a broader manner so that you can understand maybe if your positioning is incorrect. Maybe you're wrong in the way you feel about things. But this is the problem with social media, is that the companies themselves are shaping the dialogue to deliver a certain message. And that really goes very counter to the whole purpose of the freedom of speech, which is that you should, and this is Elon Musk's point about Twitter, Twitter should be that town square where people can air their opinions, they can say what they want to say without fear of reprisal. And this is, this is the one thing about social media that has really changed the culture. When Brent and I were growing up, if you wanted to say something nasty to somebody, you had to go say it to their face, and you generally got punched, afterwards. And so people shut up,
Or at least minded their manners.
Yeah, at least minded their manners. But now you can sit, anonymously behind a screen and, say things to people you would never say to their face. You can be all tough when you're 1,000 miles away, sitting on a toilet somewhere, tweeting stuff at people. It's very different to say it to their face. But, this is this kind of this environment that we've created. It's very hostile in a lot of cases on social media. We read articles about teens being, very depressed and stressed and harassed because of social media, about the way they look, about the way they think, about the way they dress, whatever.